We always hear about Anonymous, the hacktivist collective, going after these huge external targets, right? But what happens when they turn those weapons on each other? Well, we're about to dive into a civil war that's raging inside the collective itself, a battle fought not with code, but with information. A bitter schism. I mean, that's a pretty intense way to describe it. This war is happening entirely online. We're talking exposed identities, social media takedowns, the whole nine yards. And it's revealing this deep fracture in what a lot of people thought was a united front.
And this really brings us to the central question, doesn't it? When everybody's wearing a mask and everyone's got an agenda, how do you even begin to find the truth? That's the real challenge we're going to unpack here.
Yeah, this isn't your typical anonymous operation. This is an internal battle, a family feud, and it's exposing just how fragile this whole movement built on unity really is. The Legion is turning on itself. So right at the center of this hurricane is one key figure. Their mission, at least as they state it, is to clean house, to expose all the rot from within. But as we're about to see, their methods are just as controversial as the people they're targeting. So let's pull up the file on this central player, a user known as @SpiderBite. They are the engine driving this whole conflict, and if you want to understand what's going on, you've got to understand them. Okay, and this is where it gets fascinating. Look at this contradiction. @SpiderBite has a pretty high credibility score, a solid 7 out of 10. And that's because they post real factual stuff, like FBI videos and court sentences. But their personality is confrontational, and their bullshit meter score tells us they're not afraid to speculate. So you've got this picture of a source who is really valuable, but also highly, highly biased.
And this brings us right to the battlefield itself. Following @SpiderBite means you're constantly trying to separate what's credible intelligence from what's just a personal vendetta. So let's look at a direct comparison to see how this really plays out.
Here it is, the whole dilemma in a nutshell. On one side, you have a post with super high credibility. It's celebrating a real-world legal victory against a child exploitation network. It's factual, you can verify it. Awesome. On the other side, from the exact same user, you get a low credibility, guilt by association attack with zero hard evidence. And this is the key takeaway. The very same account is producing both high-value intel and low-value drama. Of course, @SpiderBite isn't just operating in a vacuum. This conflict involves a whole cast of characters, and everyone has their own style, their own agenda. It's a whole ecosystem of chaos, really. You know, it's a huge mistake to think of Anonymous as just one single thing. To really get this story, we need to understand the different archetypes that are clashing here. So let's profile a couple of key players who basically represent opposite ends of the spectrum. First up, you have Alberto Daniel Hill, who kind of acts as a stabilizing force in all this chaos. He collaborates with @SPDIRTBRT, but his focus is all about education and advocacy. He's got high credibility, a low bullshit meter, and he's described as a justice-driven survivor who brings this fact-based energy to the whole conversation. And then you've got the instigator. This profile of @YourOnHonors shows a completely different approach. They are aggressive, defiant, and really dramatic. Their credibility is lower and their bullshit meter is higher, mostly because they're always claiming these big victories without actually providing any proof. They represent that more chaotic, Legion-minded side of Anonymous that just loves to escalate the drama. So we've got the confrontational vigilante, the stable educator, and the chaotic instigator all swirling around in the same digital space. And that raises what is probably the most important question for anyone trying to make sense of all this. So, if you wanted the most credible version of the story, who should you be following? Based on our analysis, we can actually rank them. And the results? Well, they might surprise you. All right, at the top is @BXOnX, valued for their journalist-style, factual reporting. Right behind them is the stabilizer we just met, @ADaniel Hill. And notice where our central figure, @SpiderBite, lands, number 5. They're valuable because they drive the story for sure, but their rank is lower because, well, they're a direct participant, and that bias is a major, major factor. And what's so fascinating is that @SpiderBite has the exact same base credibility score as the number 1 user @BX_OnX. So why are they ranked so much lower? It all comes down to bias. One is a neutral reporter. The other is a key fighter in the war itself. And it just shows that in this world, value isn't just about having facts. It's about staying above the drama. So let's pull back for the big picture. What does this internal war really tell us about Anonymous and the nature of digital vigilantism today?
This really gets to the heart of the problem. The same passion that drives Anonymous to take on these powerful institutions is now fueling its own internal chaos. That genuine fight for justice gets all tangled up in ego and personal vendettas, and it threatens to tear the entire movement apart. This quote, ironically, is from one of @SpiderBite's own posts. It just captures this sense of resigned exhaustion. It's like an admission from inside the storm that this cycle of infighting might be a permanent feature, not a bug, of the anonymous community. And that leaves us with one last critical question. In this quest to purify their own ranks, are these hacktivists destroying the very unity they were built on? What is the ultimate cost of this digital civil war